Welcome. Good morning. It is Wednesday, August 25th. This is Wake Up with Ray G, presented by Bets TV. How are you good people doing today on this fine Wednesday? Thank you for joining us bright and early to talk NFL news, little NBA, and more NFL. But before we get started, first and foremost, Jordan Richards, my good friend, partner, and producer of this show. How you doing, baby?
I'm great, man. I'm always excited when we have breaking news on this show. And today we do have another. It's not as big as the Joel Embiid extension, but I'm pretty excited because we get to, wake up with Ray G. This is why we want to do it in the morning. We want to get there first.
Yeah, we want to be first.
First, a little bit of some J-Rob information, and we'll get into that. But I'm so happy because Sony Michel is traded, and we're gonna get into that. So let's get into it, baby. I'm happy to be here.
Sony Michel traded to the Rams. So yesterday, there was some news that came out that Darrell Henderson, thumb injury, and McVay pretty much was like, ask him, and the thumb is on his body. And clearly they were concerned. Cam Akers going down really wrecked the plans of the Rams running back field, and they had to go find help. I tweeted out that they should have traded for James Robinson a while ago when, they drafted Travis Etienne and we didn't know what was going on. Cam Akers goes down. But instead, they trade for New England Patriots running back Sony Michel. So what does this mean for the Patriots? What does this mean for the Patriots backfield, for the Rams backfield? I'm going to start with New England because I think what this does, this signifies and solidifies Ramondre Stevenson, in my opinion, as the RB2. I mean, he's looked, if we're just keeping it 100 here, he's looked like the best. And I get it, he's playing with backups and third stringers, but he can only do what he's asked to do against the people that he's playing against. And so far through 2 games in the preseason, I think he's looked like the best running back. I mean, he's shown speed, he's shown power, elusiveness. Yes, he did have a fumble, but you know what? That happens from time to time. He's a young player. But Ramondre he's looked very, very impressive. I mean, he's looked like the best, him and Najee, the best 2 rookie running backs. And I think in preseason, where 99% of starting running backs in the NFL don't play, he's looked like the best. And I know people who truly believe that he's going to push Damian Harris for the starting running back job before the end of the season. My take on that situation is before next season, like even if it doesn't happen this year, I think going into the 2022 NFL season, there's going to be a true camp battle between Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris for that starting running back job if he continues to progress the way he is. For the Rams, man, this for those of us in fantasy who were banking on Darrell Henderson to be some rock solid low-end RB1, I know some people were pushing that narrative, low-end RB1, high-end RB2. They don't want him to be that dude, man. I mean, they drafted Cam Akers in the second for a reason. Cam Akers was the projected starter this season for a reason. They don't want him to be a full workload type running back. So, in my opinion, Sony Michel isn't very good. I mean, he's looked fine so far in preseason, but he's going to get carries. He's going to fill that Malcolm Brown role. There's going to be a splattering of Funk, Xavier Jones. I think that also signifies that they really don't have a ton of confidence in either one of those guys. It's if you have Darrell Henderson in fantasy, you're probably your ass is probably tight right now. You're not feeling too hot about this move. His injury, his inability to stay healthy. And if you have Ramondre Stevenson, I think this signifies good things for him. Maybe not in the short term, but I think mid-season, late season, and we know the running back position is always so fragile. All it takes is one tweak to the thumb, one tweak to the foot, and you've got a starting running back. So I'm pretty excited about this. And, Jay, anything you got to say about these 2 situations?
So one of the things I wanted to point out, more importantly, is that I thought initially, it's like, okay, maybe Darrell Henderson's going to be the primary ball carrier. But what's going to happen in pass protection? Because he was never good at pass protection, even all the way back to Memphis. It doesn't seem like they have a whole lot of confidence in him to do that. We know that Cam Akers would have been the likely third down back. Even if they're splitting carries, Cam Akers is probably a better pass protector than Darrell Henderson. But Sony Michel was actually a player who was decent in pass protection at Georgia, was a guy who was playing some third downs and pass protecting for Tom Brady. So I could see a situation where he has that role. And now playing with Matthew Stafford, we saw how much he used to dump off to Deandre Swift. No, the two players aren't the same, but if Sony Michel is going to be on the field for third downs and getting rushing work to spell Darrell Henderson or whoever's playing running back, I think that could be a role that's actually more than people are expecting. And funny, when it first broke, I was like, man, Sean McVay's still dreaming about that Super Bowl. When Sony Michel went off for like 100 yards, scored the only touchdown in the game, it's like, he's like, if I could just get that Sony, then maybe everything would be okay. But I think, like you said, right, it comes down to pass protection. The Rams need to protect their star quarterback, and they can't do that with Darrell Henderson. They can't do that with Xavier Jones. They can't do that with Jake Funk. Those players are just too inexperienced. Darrell Henderson maybe hasn't gotten quite there yet in his NFL career. But Sony's a one-year rental. I believe his fifth-year option's already been turned down. So they have a guy who is a capable player, not the best runner of the football in the NFL so far, but he's shown flashes, and I think he can protect Matthew Stafford good enough and better than anybody else on that roster so far.
So speaking of injuries, we talked about Travis Etienne a little bit yesterday because it didn't really break, or it wasn't confirmed that he was like the duration of his injury until right after we got done with the show, probably 30 minutes after we got done. But it is confirmed, Liz Frank, done for the season, IR, and I saw a lot of medical professionals say this is a long road to recovery for Travis Etienne. Like it is not something that just heals up and no issues. I think Marquise Brown, he's got injuries all over the place, but I know he had a foot injury. Des Bryant, Liz Frank, other players have had this. I think Joe Mixon had the same type of injury last year that kept him out in reports where he was still dealing with issues up until February of this season. So, Jacksonville Jaguars, first round pick, their second first round pick out for the season. This is brutal for Etienne. I think this is a big, in theory, blow to the Jaguars offense because what he was supposed to do was provide explosiveness, speed, electricity to that backfield. As good a running back as James Robinson is, nobody is going to mistake him for the type of explosive athlete that Travis Etienne is. If you had Etienne in any dynasty league, what are your thoughts on him today, right now? Because I know that's what a lot of people tuning in. They're like, what do we do with Travis Etienne? Are you still looking to acquire him? Do you still have supreme confidence that when he comes back, he's going to be the guy? Or are you kind of like, man, if I got a good offer, I'm moving him?
Man, honestly, like I'm devastated for him because to your point about the previous injuries, from what I had seen, this is actually worse than those previous injuries. We haven't seen a running back of this caliber, or really many players of this caliber, get the full Liz Frank fracture. There's some who've had the strain, who've had kind of the less severe form of the same injury, which is what Joe Mixon had and a few other players have had. There's one defensive back, I forget the name of the player, but he's pretty much the only guy we've seen come back all the way to full speed. Joe Mixon's wasn't quite the same severity that Travis Etienne is going to have to undergo. And then one of our close doctors, since I am not a doctor,
you're trying to sound like a doctor right now.
But Jeff told me it was about 11 months, I believe is what he said. It's going to be about an 11-month recovery for full recovery. And people are saying that they can try and get him back for the end of the season. And it's unrealistic because of the severity of the injury. But back to the whole fantasy aspect of it, I really don't know. Like, until I find out more information from the doctors to see how the surgery went and things like that. And then, because as well, it's an ongoing process. We're going to see more and more information come out about this injury now that a high-end draft pick, high-end player has it. So that will really tell us what to expect going forward. If it's an 11-month return time, that's still, that's basically August. That's even past almost training camp. Training camp is coming. And so if it's lingering, maybe he needs a second surgery. I don't know if I would be trading for him. I just don't know. Like, I do have him in one spot. I really need him. But if I could move him for like a pick down the line and maybe just say, you know what, I don't want to run that risk, kind of the same way people may be thinking the same way about Cam Akers. I think he's going to come back. But if you don't want to run that risk, I understand it. If you want to take that risk, it's probably worth it because of how explosive he is. But like you talked about yesterday, if he's this explosive, Like, we know how explosive he is. If he can't be the same player, what is his effectiveness level overall if he
Yeah.
can't do the same things he used to do because of this foot injury?
So let me just ask you this. He was my RB3 coming out. I had Najee Harris as my clear-cut runaway RB1. He's been that for like a year and a half for me. It's just different. Then I had Javonte Williams followed by Travis Etienne. Who would you rather have? Who do you have more confidence in? If both players come back, if Cam Akers returns from his Achilles injury, Travis Etienne returns from his foot injury, and both players reach 80% of what you perceive their value or their, NFL prospectus to be. Like Cam Akers comes back and he's 80% of the same guy that people were talking about had RB1 upside, or Travis Etienne comes back and he's 80, 90% of whatever that is, which I don't even know what Etienne's ceiling. We all toss that word around and it has truly no meaning. It's subjective from person to person. But who would you rather have in a vacuum? Do you have more confidence in Cam Akers coming back and being 80% of what you thought he could be, or do you have more confidence in Travis Etienne coming back and being whatever it is that you personally thought he would be? Which player would you want in a vacuum?
So our boy in the comments, Stone, nailed it. It's Cam Akers, and I think it's because his game isn't predicated on his explosiveness, right? I think Cam Akers can still win as a runner. I think he can still make guys miss in the backfield without being overly explosive, right? And so that's the reason why. But on top of that, it's the pass catching ability. Like I do think that Cam Akers is just a better overall running back than Travis Etienne and always has been. I think he's going to play in a better system for probably a better coach, but I'm sure the coach is going to change next year. But we don't really know if it's a better coach today because Travis Etienne may have a new coach next year. But I do believe that overall that Ram system versus a Jaguar system, no matter who's running it, is probably going to be a better running back system overall. Match that with the talent, I'm going to be taking Cam Akers over Travis Etienne with these two devastating injuries.
Yeah, I definitely think it is. I think it's a risky proposition to go with Akers. I really do. I think you're running huge risk because it is an Achilles injury, and although we've seen players recover from that injury, it's still risky. But if you're asking me right now, I do believe Cam Akers is the better overall running back. I do, explosiveness or not. And I mean, if somebody pulled up their, advanced speed score, burst score, I don't even know if Etienne is more explosive. I'm not sure. But if Cam Akers can be 80% of what I thought he could be this season, I'm still betting on that. And you can call that crazy. You can call that whatever you want. Again, I just was never overly high on Travis Etienne, combined with the fact that it's another year of opportunity for James Robinson to show that he's the guy. He is in that Jacksonville offense with Urban Meyer and Darrell Bevel. Just one for one, I have more confidence in Cam Akers coming back being what I thought he could be opposed to Travis Etienne. So that's where I fall on that side of the coin, and I think a lot of fantasy managers are going to have to kind of figure out what they want to do. I'm personally not trading for him, and I'm in over 30-plus dynasty leagues. I have Travis Etienne in 0, so I don't have to worry about trading him away. But, he's young. He's going to do his best to recover, and we'll see him on the field at some point in 2022. Now, the last piece of news that we hit on yesterday, but again, right when we got done, we saw a quote from Bill Belichick. Well, not from Belichick, from people inside the Patriots organization that said there's internal frustration over Cam Newton and his basically decision not to get vaccinated. This move, you've already got Patriot legends like Rob Ninkovich and Damian Woody, Rodney Harrison saying that Mac Jones should be the starter. Just name him the starter. Bill Belichick saying he's going to do what's in the best interest of the team. They start joint practices this week with the Giants. Mac Jones is taking all the reps with the first team. He's going to have a chance to shine today in practice. So we'll be watching those reports. They might be on the field, right now getting ready to go. And the Patriots play on Sunday. So it's going to be interesting to see if Cam Newton comes back Thursday and does not play at all on Sunday. I think he's locked up the starter job, regardless. But I think his leash is razor thin. If he plays on Sunday, what happens if Mac Jones starts the preseason game on Sunday and then Cam Newton comes in after him? Or Cam Newton starts and plays a quarter? I think the battle, and you got to understand the difference between this year and years past is, in the past, after the fourth preseason game, They played the next week. This year, after the final preseason game this weekend, there's a week off and then the NFL season starts. So there's still an entire week of practice and then your entire prep week before actual NFL games kick off. I have no clue. I truly think find a coin, flip it, and heads or tails who's going to start for the Patriots. I don't know, man. Do you have any thoughts on do the recent rumblings or rumors about frustrations over Cam Newton, do you think that sways Bill Belichick in any way, shape, form, or fashion to just say, the hell with it, we're going to start the young gun, let's get Mac Jones out there right away?
I hope so. Like, it's a good day for Patriots fans. Like, it's a really good day. We already got rid of Sony Michel, one of the worst first-round draft picks probably Bill Belichick's ever had. Now we're hearing that Cam Newton is maybe going to go. We're finally going to maybe get rid of him. Some, don't get me wrong, I'm sure some fans like him. I've been telling you forever that no matter how good he is, I want him to go, man. I want to see Mac Jones. And I think it was Ian Hardis yesterday who put out a tweet from PFF saying that Mac Jones was like the number one graded quarterback in passer rating in the preseason, number one in accuracy, number one in deep target percentage. He was basically number one across all quarterbacks across the board from PFF as a passer. And yet, for some reason, we want to go out there and put out Cam Newton. Now, to your point about Bill Belichick, he's an old school guy. He wants his players to do what he wants them to do. I don't want to say he go as far as say he wants to control them, but he definitely wants to push them in his favor. Right?
It's the Patriot way, right? It is the
Patriot way. You fall in line and you do what you're supposed to do to help the team win. It's all about the team and winning as a team. But you see, it's a personal choice. You don't want to get vaccinated. That's fine. But if Bill sees that as, a way of rebelling and not trying to be for the team, whatever it is that it goes on in his crazy mind, he's still got 5 Super Bowls. He can do whatever he wants. And so I'm hoping that he just decides, you know what? I don't want to deal with the COVID issues. Cam already had to go on the COVID list last year. So why would he deal with that again and just start Mac Jones the whole season and let it be whatever happens? Because he drafted Mac Jones for a reason. So at some point, Mac's going to be the starter anyways.
It's interesting because everybody, it is their choice and their right to get vaccinated or not. That is strictly everybody's individual decision. But when your employer pretty much lays out the guidelines of if you are unvaccinated and you leave the state, the facility, whatever the bubble rules are for those individuals, there are ramifications. And I think when you're looking at your team, if Mac Jones, I believe, is vaccinated. Don't quote me on that, but I believe he is. Like, why run the risk of a player playing 2 weeks and then might be out for a week because he left or he had a visitor come in? It's one of those things where if you're Cam Newton, like this is, I don't want to say his final shot because I do still think that Cam Newton is an upgrade over Drew Lock. I do think Cam Newton is an upgrade over if the Colts were going to roll out Jacob Eason or something like that. But if this is your final shot and you should want to do everything possible not to disrupt your chances of starting. And this just shows like one slip up, one misunderstanding, one situation. What if this happened during week 6 of the regular season, right? He traveled to see the doctor. Now he's out. He can't practice. You got to throw in it lends itself to a very tough situation to put the team in. Again, that's his choice, his decision. But I do think, whereas I was pretty damn confident that it's Cam's job up until week 4, unless he's on a roll, week 5, unless he's on a roll, to now I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, I really think it's 50-50, and it'd be interesting to see if there were odds on who's going to start the season as quarterback for the Patriots. But some other quick news. The preseason All-America team dropped yesterday. These teams are a joke all the way through and through. Last year, Sean Wade was preseason, was not even preseason, end of season, first team All-America. First team, Sean Wade, Ohio State cornerback. Going into the national championship game, Sean Wade said, I want Devontae Smith. I'm going to lock him up. There were quotes about Sean Wade. I want him one-on-one. He had what did he have? 200
in the first half.
203 3 touchdowns in the first half. I tweeted this picture out where Sean Wade is just like trying to catch Devontae Smith, and he was first team All-American. I just disagree.
Nope.
The list is a joke to me, man. I mean, I like Clemson wide receiver Justin Ross. I think Justin Ross is a talented wide receiver, and more importantly, I'm glad that he has been cleared from whatever spinal injuries he had in order to come back and play. Like, that's first and foremost. Like, kudos to that young man for having the intestinal fortitude, the perseverance to get through that injury and to not have fear to get back on that field. So that's first and foremost. But there's no way in hell he should have been named preseason first-team All-America. And it ain't even about Treylon Burks. I mean, Kayshon Boutte from LSU. You've got Garrett Wilson from Ohio State. I would have been fine with them pairing up the Ohio State wide receivers. It's just a joke. It's a popularity contest, and if you want to keep it really real, there's some smaller school wide receivers that produced at a phenomenal clip last year that didn't even make the list. It's who's popular, what players have the name cachet, the name value. I just thought that the preseason All-America list was a joke. But let's move on to some more lists because. David Bell. There we go. We got my man Stone. David Bell. Somebody like it's just a joke, right? But let's talk about the NFL Network. They do their NFL Top 100 annually, and so many people rag on it, but we all tap in to watch it because it's really well done. It's excellent video quality, like production quality. And a few weeks ago, I tweeted out my predictions of the top 10. Like these are who I think the top 10 players are. And we kind of talked about it, Jay. We kind of talked about this offline yesterday, who we thought should have been in and who we thought should not have been in the top 10. So they're going to release the top 10 this coming Sunday. And this was my list. So I had Aaron Rodgers 1, Derrick Henry 2, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Donald, Josh Allen, Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, Tom Brady, Jalen Ramsey, TJ Watt were my predictions for the top 10. I've lost one of those players because Jalen Ramsey is not inside the top 10. He was placed at number 13, so we know he's not inside the top 10. But all the other guys are inside the top 10 players of this year's, voted on by the players NFL Top 100. The guy that was absent that I had a little bit lower was DeAndre Hopkins. So we know Nuke Hopkins is inside the top 10. What are your thoughts on, these players inside the top 10, my order of these, and anybody that you think is just a glaring omission that I missed over for these top 10 players?
So I think you did a really good job, right? I'd say my first beef really is Josh Allen. It's not to say that I don't think he's a top 10 player, but it's more so to the nature of this top 100 and what it's very recency bias based. And you look at Aaron Rodgers, number one.
But real quick, it is recency. It's from the past season. It's not top 100 players for their career. It's top 100 players of the 2020 season. So it is based on what they did last year.
Yeah, but I guess
that's.
So.
I'm just telling you that's what it is.
Because I think that's where you see kind of the career arc of these players, and so it's like, yeah, they did it last year. Like, for instance, we talked about this before: DeAndre Hopkins versus Stefan Diggs. If you're trying to tell me that DeAndre Hopkins had a better season than Stefan Diggs, I believe you said was at 11. We know DeAndre Hopkins in the top 10. So is that recency bias, or is that just because he caught the Hail Murray? Like, I think honestly, it's just because of that one play. And that's the only reason why he's in the top 10 over Stefan Diggs, which, it's like, but again, Nuke Hopkins has a crazy career. He's a top 100. He's probably a top 10 player, period, in the NFL. But was he a top 10 player last season? I wouldn't say he's better than Stefan Diggs. No.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like, when I saw Diggs at 11, because I really debated putting Stefan Diggs in this list. Like, I was like, Stefan Diggs has got to be in this list, right? He has to be in this list. I did that with the assumption that he would be probably the first or second, or the second wide receiver to Devontae Adams. But I really believe that Jalen Ramsey, being an all-pro cornerback, being what he is to the Rams, I thought he was a shoo-in for the top 10. if you're asking me, there's no way I think DeAndre Hopkins had a better season last year than Diggs. I think Diggs had 127 receptions, over 1,500 receiving yards, and 8 or 9 touchdowns. You know, Nuke did go over 100 receptions. I was kind of shocked. He had like 115, I believe, 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns. But yeah, I think Diggs was better in if the setting, the setup is top 100 players of 2020. I'm taking Stefan Diggs over DeAndre Hopkins. What do you think about number 1, Aaron Rodgers? I had a little pushback on Aaron Rodgers over Tom Brady, who won the Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers over Patrick Mahomes, Derrick Henry over Patrick Mahomes for last season. I mean, what are your thoughts on the top guys that I have on this list?
That's a good question, actually, because chances are Tom Brady's probably going to be number 1. But Lamar Jackson did win MVP last year, and Aaron Rodgers won MVP this year, and so maybe it's just kind of like how it goes. Lamar was MVP and was number 1 last year, and now Aaron Rodgers is going to be number 1 this year. I have no problem with it, honestly, but I think you could definitely bump up Brady a little bit because his season was still really good. I believe he still threw for like 4,400 yards and 40 touchdowns. So again, kind of comparable to what Josh Allen did. I don't think Josh Allen threw for like anything. I don't think he threw for like 50 touchdowns, but I know he was up there for sure. So I think from that standpoint, it's interesting. I'm curious though how they're gonna determine what these rankings are, because what is an excellent season from especially someone like Jalen Ramsey, and he didn't make the list, but compared to or Aaron Donald, for instance, who's always in the top 10. I don't know how many sacks he had last year. What's his impact versus a quarterback like Tom Brady, who took the Bucks from mid-level obscurity all the way to Super Bowl champions? You can't put the same value on those things. So these lists are always kind of fun just to debate and talk about. Derrick Henry at 2, though, is extremely high. He did rush for 2,000 yards, but did he have a larger impact? Was he a better player, more dominant player? It's interesting. It's because Tom, like you said, Tom could be number 1, but you have him all the way down to 8. Rodgers, I believe he threw 38 touchdowns, something like that, and only had like 5 interceptions. Devontae Adams is kind of a product of Aaron Rodgers, but equally dominant.
So here's Derrick Henry I believe he was Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, to say that a player who rushed for over 2,000 yards is extremely high. I don't buy that, man. I mean, he was Offensive Player of the Year in the NFL, over 2,000 rushing yards on the season, which is absolutely insane to do that in 16 games. I think he's going to be voted inside the top 3. And if you're telling me who had the better season, individual season, I mean, what Derrick Henry had to face when they knew they were running the ball, it was going to King Henry. I think he's appropriately placed, but we could agree to disagree on that. But it's going to be fun to watch how that top 10 list shakes out. Now, you dropped something on the show sheet about Zion Williamson, the power forward, whatever the hell position he plays for the New Orleans Pelicans. Some rumors about Zion and the Knicks. We'll go into that, man.
So basically, it was like this. I don't even know where the report was from. So we'll say it's a rumor right now. But it's this kind of conspiracy theory between CAA, the super agency, and the Knicks and ESPN. And so basically there's all these tying representations where CAA represents people from ESPN. They represent Zion Williamson. They represent the GM for the Knicks. They represent the coach of the Knicks. And they represent a whole bunch of people within ESPN as well, like I've kind of already mentioned. So it's this like weird push. And you do see it a lot from ESPN. Every time there's a little thing about the Knicks, they push it. They're like, oh, yeah, maybe Zion Williamson can eventually end up in the Knicks. And so it was this report basically saying how there's just a crazy number of connections between CAA and ESPN and the Knicks, and ultimately as a way to force Zion Williamson to this big market in New York. And so it's like just kind of a weird conspiracy theory. And I wanted to bring it up because we talk about it in sports, how corrupt sports is and all these things that kind of go into it. But this doesn't sound like it would be a coincidence if he ended up there. And it's just like ESPN will say, oh, well, we're hearing some reports that Zion has some mutual interest in the Knicks, blah, 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 blah. When it sounds like that's just a bunch of bullshit. And it's just them pushing this narrative that they've been trying to get. And so it's actually the heads of CAA that are pushing this all together with the influence of Tom Thibodeau, the head coach, who is represented by them, the GM who's represented by them and used to work for them on top of that. And then you have all these people at ESPN that want to push the same narrative because it all benefits the same brand, which is ultimately CAA. And then, of course, Zion getting to that big market, helping out the agency, helping out himself, all these things. So it's just like interesting. And it's not, I haven't really seen a report like this in a while where there's all this speculation about Zion going to the Knicks and as well having all this kind of backing behind it as to why it's going to happen and how the media is driving the narrative and kind of forcing Zion out of New Orleans. Oh, you're muted right now.
Drinking. I didn't want to drink coffee on air because people will complain that they don't want to hear my ARSM, whatever that's called, noises, sipping coffee.
ASMR.
ASMR, exactly, just sipping coffee. But how can he force his way out of a contract? Like he's still, got a year left on his rookie deal, 2 years left on his rookie. I don't know how long NBA rookie deals are, like 4-year contracts.
4-year, yeah. But
So
then he'd
he's
be a
on-
restricted free agent. But the problem is like that's if the problem is that it's not just Zion. Like when AD wanted to leave, it was LeBron forcing the issue and the Lakers were forcing the issue and the media was forcing the issue. So if you have a big conglomerate like ESPN and CAA and all of their agents behind the scenes trying to put pressure on the Pelicans to force Zion out, there may be nothing they can really do. And then on top of that, what's the return going to be? It's probably going to be a piece of shit because Zion's like, I don't even think he's 21 years old yet. He's only been in the league for 2 years. And then it's interesting to see all the manipulation behind the scenes. And people talk about how lawyers and agents really do rule everything. You know, I'm sure you take advantage of that a little bit, but it's just interesting to kind of see how all these things come together and how the lawyers and the agents all play into this.
I'm looking at Zion's just his stats, right? In 2019, in 27 minutes as a rookie, he averaged 22 points a game, 58% field goal percentage, 6 rebounds a game, like as a rookie, right? Last season in 33 minutes, 27 points a game, 61% field goal percentage, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. He's legit, man. Like,
yeah.
I mean, he's like good. The new age Charles Barkley. Like that's what he is. 6'7", 284, 6'7", 300 pounds. I mean, that has a 45-inch vertical. He's the modern day version of Sean Kemp and Charles Barkley with 10x the athleticism. You get him in New York, he's a star. Like New Orleans, the Pelicans, he's Zion. But you get him in New York in that market, that's going to be interesting to see how this situation plays out. Now, the last little bit of news, or did you have anything else you want to say about this? You look like you were going to say something else. No, you good. Well, I was just going to go into, there was a tweet that popped up yesterday, and it's going to lead us into our NFC West team preview that I saw. It's like a 4.5 minute, like mini documentary, mini just life story of Kyler Murray, the high school athlete. And they're basically making the case that he's the greatest high school football player ever in U.S. history, in the country, like the greatest high school football player of all time. I suggest you go check it out. It's super, super dope, man. It's the legend of Kyler Murray, and it just goes through all his accomplishments, man. And I live out here probably 30 minutes away from where he played high school football here in Texas and at Allen, Texas. It's a powerhouse. Like you guys have, if you've never looked up the Allen High School Football Stadium, it looks like a college stadium. Like, look up Allen High School Football Stadium. It's insane. Like, everybody knows the Allen Eagles, all right? 43-0 at Allen after taking over as the starting quarterback as a sophomore. He won the state title his sophomore year. He won the state title his junior season and the state title in his senior year. 3-time state championship, 2-time Texas High School Football Player of the Year, 2-time National Player of the Year. He was a 2-sport All-American in football and in baseball, Heisman Trophy selection, first-round Major League Baseball pick, and we all know he was the first overall NFL draft pick. And when you watch this little mini-series and you start diving in to how good Kyler was in high school, I believe during his high school career, he played against and beat 58 future NFL players. He beat and competed against 58 future NFL players and beat them all in the highest classification, 6A in the state of Texas. Like, where I played high school football at in Nevada, the highest classification was 4A. He did it at 2 levels above where I played in high school at 5'9", 150 pounds when he was probably in high school. Just impressive. Like when you watch this, what did you just think about Kyler, man? Like, cause it was really freaking dope how they did this thing.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. And one of the players actually that some people may be familiar with who was in, I think he had a small quote in the documentary, was Jalen Guyton, the current receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. And I believe he played there for the 3 years that Kyler was there, which is really interesting. But to talk more about the story, it's interesting because I knew a bit about him. And you talk about how you live in the state of Texas. One of my really, really good friends, Adam, actually went to South Lake. South Lake plays Allen every year. They're in 6A as well. Everyone knows Quinn Ewers. So I heard about Kyler a long time before he was big time playing in college, Oklahoma, and all that kind of stuff, Texas Tech. So it's interesting because it's like, how do you say that he's the best player ever, but the stats and everything that he did, and you didn't even we don't even know what his baseball numbers are, but he must have hit 300. He must have had power. He's obviously really fast. He plays in the outfield. He's got a tremendously strong arm. So me being someone who's into baseball, I can see where all the skills can translate for him to be a great outfielder in baseball. But then you talk about greatest high school football player ever, and not even just to say that, maybe you live in Maryland or maybe you live somewhere where football isn't crazy, but to say he's the best player ever and even the best player in the state of Texas, that in itself is a massive statement. Yeah. But based on the accolades, based on everything he's done, and his NFL career has hardly even started, it's pretty easy to say that it's a very difficult resume to beat, and it probably will never be beaten.
Check out his high school numbers from his sophomore season to his senior season. 10,386 passing yards, 117 TDs, 21 INTs, 4,139 rushing yards, and 69 touchdowns, a combined total of 14,525 yards, and 186 total touchdowns in 3 seasons.
And not even 3 full seasons. I believe in the doc they said it was 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, he took over.
How long is the season? Season's what? 15 games maybe?
No. High school football, it's like 11 games, 11, 12 games, man.
So he didn't even play half a season. So he basically did that.
Insane.
In 2.5 seasons, which is just that doesn't make any sense.
It's crazy, and it just leads us to the NFC West. So let's get into Beat the Rush and talk about the Arizona Cardinals.
Wake up! This is Beat the Rush. Get out of the way,
jackass! So the Arizona Cardinals, we all know Cliff Kingsbury and what we think this offense should be, but let's take a look at the Cardinals' record, lines, odds. Put up or shut up time for Cliff Kingsbury. Hell yeah, it is. He's supposed to be this golden child play caller. And so far, it really has not come to fruition in Arizona. They were 8-8 last year, minus 200 to make the playoffs, plus 190 minus 200 to miss. Dude, you got to put something on here that I can fucking see. I don't know what this is. To miss the playoffs, plus 190 to make it, plus 650 to win the division. Over under win totals 8.5. So it's literally like right there where they were last year. Are they going to have more than 8 wins? And if you take the over, you can get plus pricing for that. The under, it's minus 115. What are your thoughts on Arizona, what they have to bring this season, the division in which they play in, which is, it seems like one of the most difficult divisions in football this year, if not the most competitive division in football? Maybe the AFC East has something to say about that. But what are your thoughts on the Cardinals as a team overall in 2021?
Well, they've obviously brought in some players to help bring a better culture to the team, bringing in J.J. Watt, and as well trying to fortify that defense a little bit more. But seeing these lines, Vegas they ain't convinced. They're just not. And looking up their lines, looking up the Rams lines, it seems like Vegas is just saying, you guys just bet like crazy and we'll just see what happens, because there's just so little to separate all of these teams. I find it a little bit interesting that they don't see any improvement. Basically they're just saying, last year you went 8-8, there's an extra game this year, we'll give you that half. They basically have no idea what to do with the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah. I think we're all expecting some growth from Kyler Murray. Bringing in Rondale Moore should help. Maybe bringing in AJ Green should help. But I just don't see it, man. I just don't. And like you said, Cliff is just... He was the wonder kid. He's going to install this air raid offense, and it'll be great for Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray has looked good, but he's had some moments he hasn't looked so good. And there's been some moments where that defense has definitely not looked good. And playing in
Right.
such a tough division, how are they going to separate themselves? And honestly, for every team in this division, I don't see any separation amongst any of them, which makes it even more difficult to say who's making the playoffs, who's winning the division, who's going over, who's going under. It's just a crapshoot from start to finish in the NFC West.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. I asked the question the other day, what has Cliff Kingsbury done to truly, like, what did he do to deserve this job in the first place? And so far, he's just looked okay to me. You know, it's crazy that in 2018, and this is just how wild and how quick time flies. In 2018, they drafted Josh Rosen, number 10, I believe. I know he was a top 15 pick.
Yeah.
I believe he was top 10. Then the very next season, they get rid of, who was the coach at the time? Was it BA? No, it was
so.
Wilkes. No. It was Steve Wilkes.
Steve Wilkes.
Steve Wilkes. They get rid of Wilkes. They bring Cliff Kingsbury in 2019. And then the very next year, they drafted another quarterback, number 1 overall, Kyler Murray, which there was a lot of debate. Was he going to go number 1 because of his size? Yada, yada, yada. Like, when you really look at what Kyler's done so far in the NFL, like, can you guess how many passing touchdowns he had last year, just off the top of your head?
I believe it was 27. I think I looked it up yesterday.
He had 26 touchdown passes, 12 INTs. As a rookie, 20 and 12. Like, I mean, he hasn't hit the 4,000-yard mark yet. He almost got it last season. But when you just look and think about, Kyler Murray, when I see, his skill set and dynamism is the fact that he's just such an incredible athlete, and the rushing capability that he brings to the team. I don't know how prolific of an NFL passer he is. I think he's really good. I'm not going to put him up there with, Aaron Rodgers and, Justin Herbert. I'm not putting him up there yet. And when I'm looking at his odds, this season, 4,100. That's his passing season totals. Minus 112 price on that. Plus 2,500 to win NFL MVP, so 25 to 1 to win MVP. And then his regular season rushing yard totals is 675.5. Is he going to get to 676 rushing yards? And if you're asking me right now what line I have more confidence in, it's definitely his rushing yard line. The passing numbers, he should get there with an extra game, right? He was almost there. He was almost there last season. They had to throw the ball a little bit more than they did last year. He attempted the Cardinals as a team attempted 558 passes. Kyler Murray taking all of those snaps. I don't know, man. Where are you at with his lines for this season?
So I'm definitely with you in the sense that he can beat the rushing yards more so than the passing yards. But I think it's important to point out, too, that he was dealing with a shoulder injury last year. Yeah. So he's going to be fully healthy. Let's hope. He still does run. He still does take shots every now and then. But I know we've talked about this plenty of times. We think he does a great job of avoiding those hits as much as possible. But to talk more about the passing itself, I'm hoping that they can kind of get on track. And I'm hoping that shoulder will be right. And that's why I wanted to throw his MVP odds, because I wanted to get your take on that. Because like we've seen already, he has that ability to run the ball. He could rush for 1,000 yards if he wanted to. He could probably throw for 4,000 on top of that. But it really just comes down to, what does Cliff Kingsbury want to do with this offense? Because I think that Kyler can do anything that any coach wants him to do. But it has to be the right system. They have to be calling the right plays. They can't be just messing around. Like, I get that they do this whole like short, quick passing game thing, but it hasn't really worked. Like, it's
so that kind of speaks to team pass plays per game last year. 37.8 pass plays per game, which was number 16 in the NFL. So right there in the middle. Pass attempts in total, 7th in the NFL. Deep ball attempts is where Kyler Murray likes to take his shots. He had 70 of those last year, which was 5th in the NFL. So, I mean, it's kind of like they're pass plays per game right in the middle of the road, but they want to take their shots downfield. When you're looking at, danger plays for him, and I'm looking at Player Profiler for some of these stats. 17th in the NFL, he had 28 of those. Completed air yards, 2,255, which was 11th in the NFL. air yard attempts, just how far did he throw the ball, 42, 92, 10th in the NFL. So he's not at the tip top of anything, but he's also like not at the bottom of any advanced passing analytics. So if you're talking about more help offensively with A.J. Green and Rondale Moore, maybe some more consistency in the backfield, bringing in James Conner, rolling with Chase Edmonds as the guy, maybe that frees up some other areas of the passing attack that Kyler Murray can contribute in. But, 820 rushing yards last year. I'm taking the over on the rushing yards. And the price isn't great, but it's not bad. It's minus 111, so you probably need to put some money up in order to really capitalize on that price for his regular season rushing yards. But it sounds like you're pretty bullish on his passing numbers. So you're feeling the 4,100 and a half, like you would take the over on that, man?
Yeah, actually, I do. I think I would, honestly. It's not because I don't think that I get the concerns with the offense, but I just think that Kyler is going to overcome all these obstacles. Like we just talked about how the dude was a winner in high school, and he hasn't really been able to get back to that. He got to Oklahoma. I believe they only lost 2 games at Oklahoma. He only lost 2 games that season in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. But now he's back to it. They won, I believe, 5 games their first season. They won 8 games last year. Now it's playoffs or bust. And I think Kyler knows, and he's also talked about how it's time for him to be more of a leader. Before it was Patrick Peterson, and he was kind of the vocal leader of that offense. But now it's Kyler's turn to take the reins, be the vocal leader on offense, be the vocal leader of the team, and really lead that team the way they need to be led, the way that Kyler led Allen for those 3 years in high school, all the way, hopefully, to the playoffs. I don't know if they can make the playoffs because that division is so good, but I think that Kyler's going to do everything he can, whether it's through the air, whether it's on the ground, to help that team win games this season.
Yeah,
Not buying it, huh?
No, he should, man. I mean, I'm excited about the pass catcher. So, he was damn near there 2 years in a row. So you give him an extra game, he stays healthy. They do a good job of pricing these totals. So let's take a look. Let's go to the backfield real quick. All right, let's talk about the running back, Chase Edmonds, 600. That's his line right now. I think this is low. We have him projected at 673. I'm at 600 and a half, minus 111 price on this. Regular season rushing yards. Over under Chase Edmonds.
It's really just a bet as to whether or not you think he's going to start the whole year, right? Like that's kind of the biggest problem. His highest career total isn't even 450 yards. So if you think he's going to be the starter, then yeah, he'll probably only take him 150 carries. He'll get there. But are you ready to make that bet that he's the guy? Because you still have Kyler rushing it. We still have James Conner. Well, I want to believe. I do, but I don't know if I'm there.
So what I'm willing to bet on is that he exceeds his career rush attempts total, which has been 97. His career high in rush attempts was 97, and that was last year. 2018 and 2019, he had 60 on the dot. So if you're telling me he goes from 97 rush attempts to, what do you want to give him? I mean, we're just throwing out 150, 175. Is that
I
high?
think he'd get there with 150. I think 150. He averages 4.5 a carry for his career, so 150 would probably get him there.
So realistically, that's 53 more rush attempts than he had last season, and you do the math on that over 17 games. I think that's more than reasonable for a player who it definitely seems like they want to get him more involved. No Kenyon Drake. James Conner so far in limited opportunity has looked fine. He's James Conner. He's a hammer. I like the over on Chase Edmonds. I will bet that he has more than 97 rush attempts and that he eclipsed 600 rushing yards. I mean, I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to talk you into it. I just think, he is at 450 last season on 97 attempts. You give him 53 more carries, and I'm being very conservative here. If he can't get to 600 yards, if he can't get another 150 yards on 53 attempts, then he's god-awful, and we don't need to worry about him in fantasy football or from a betting perspective. But when you look at the price, minus 111, a unit
projections
really
lean that way too, which is
slowly
pushing me.
I think this is a solid bet. I would take the over on Chase Edmonds. I think he's a fine running back. I'm not going to sit up here and say that he's the running back of the future, or he's going to be the guy for years to come. But I think this season he should definitely be able to get over 601 yards. So let's go to what everybody really wants to talk about is the pass catching weapons for Kyler Murray, because if you believe that he's going to go for over 4,100 yards, then this man is probably going to be a big reason why he does that. And you see the pricing, especially with the touchdowns, as to how much you got to put up in order to make some money off of Nuke. So right now, his odds for receiving yards leader in the NFL is plus 1,000. His receiving yard total line over under is 1,300 for Nuke, a little low, I think. And his receiving touchdown total is 7.5, which, I mean, I think he had 6 last season, so you're banking on him getting 2 more than he had last year. And COVID season, no preseason. I think that's a solid bet. But what are your thoughts on Nuke's line? 1,300, man. Can Nuke hit 1,300 in 2021?
Oh yeah, come on. He definitely can. It's just going to come down to how that team performs. And that's the sad part about this team in general is like Nuke Hopkins could get 1,600 yards in a season. I believe he's hit 1,500 before. I don't know if he's hit 1,600.
Yep, 1572. 1572.
Yeah, exactly. And that was probably with Watson, but it could have been with anybody because that's just what he does. He's that talented. But that's the problem is how are they going to use him? Is it going to be all through him? I'm hoping it's kind of not, to be honest. I hope that they kind of spread it around a little bit more, and they do. But there's definitely some games where it's Nuke, and that's it. He gets 15, 16 targets, but he's got to convert on those targets and all that stuff. And I was looking at his stats a few days ago, and he's got like the highest completion percentage of his career. He's averaging a great yards per reception, all these things. But it's that offense, man. Like, if they're good, and I do think they're going to be good, I should probably be taking the over. But to your point about the touchdowns, there's a little bit of juice towards the under. So if you believe he's going to be at 7, which I think was his number last year, then you're getting a little bit of value, right? Then you're getting a little bit of value. But if you want to go over, your point, and we'll get into him, of course, is Rondale Moore. And I think in the red zone, he's going to be a weapon, and they're not going to be throwing fade routes to DeAndre Hopkins like they did in 2015. It's a new way teams are scoring touchdowns. They're more efficient, and they're going to be using these guys in space to get them the ball in the red zone, and Kyler's going to run for like another 10 touchdowns probably.
So DeAndre Hopkins last year, 29.4% target share, which was second in the NFL. Routes run, 540, which was 8th in the NFL. Snap share, 93%, 6th in the NFL. Number 10 in air yards. 18 red zone targets, which was 7th in the NFL. So to your point about not throwing fades to him, I mean, he had 18 red zone targets last year, and he caught 11 of those things. Completed air yards, 860, which was 6th in the NFL. Yak. DeAndre Hopkins, a lot of people don't think about Nuke as a run after the catch guy. 2nd in the NFL with 547 yards after the catch. I mean, and then this is what makes him so good. Drops, 1, which was 113th in the NFL with a 0.6 drop rate. Like, he just doesn't drop the ball whatsoever. He's efficient. 115 receptions, 2nd in the NFL to Stefan Diggs. We talked about that earlier. He's a beast, man. 160 damn targets last year. It's hard for me to see a world in which Nuke doesn't go for 1,300 yards. In 2019, played in 15 games, 150 targets. He had 1,165. So, a little bit down season for him there. But I think Rondale Moore, the addition of Rondale Moore and the addition of, A.J. Green is going to free up some stuff for Nuke because, he had Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella, and Dan Arnold playing with him. There was no reprieve, no help to clear up some coverage away from DeAndre Hopkins. So 1,300 yards with an extra game. I think I'm taking the over on that, man. I like the over on Nuke. Yeah, I'm smashing the over. Touchdown, I probably would stay away from that. 6 last year, 7 the year before that. His last double-digit touchdown season was in 2018 where he had 11. And I do think Rondale Moore takes away some of those short area and intermediate targets. So let's go into Rondale Moore and take a look at his Starving for more. I love the headline. Look at those thighs, man. Look at those thighs, the muscularity in those legs. I love it, man. But his over-under receiving yard total is 545.5. We have him projected at 639, minus 111 price on Rondale Moore's receiving yard totals this season. I'm just going to come right out and say I have already put 2 units on the over Rondale Moore, 545 passing yards. I think it's what did I say? Oh, the thighs.
You talking about the thighs?
Eric Crocker, man. Croc, man, go work out. Leave me alone, bro. Yeah, I'm team big thighs, bro. I got some muscular quadriceps as well. But I smashed the over on this, and I think you can see the way that the Cardinals and Cliff Kingsbury are trying to utilize him early in the preseason. Short area screens, getting him the ball quickly. And we also see how just efficient of a route runner he is over the middle of the field. And you see him running a lot of slant routes, a lot of digs from the slot position. Like you saw that early because they want to get this kid the ball in space. And think about, you're not going to double Rondale. So if he's playing out of the slot and you're throwing a nickel cornerback on him, you're trying to drop down a safety, you're trying to shade him with an outside backer, he is going to annihilate that type of coverage, because you're not going to put the number 1 on him when you've got A.J. Green on one side and DeAndre Hopkins on another. What are your thoughts on Rondale Moore's over-under receiving yard totals this season?
I'm 100% with you, man. It's the over, and I think it's going to be pretty easy. Pretty easy for Rondale Moore to go way over. And the starving for more, I'm assuming you saw, he switched to number 4. They granted it to him.
Whoa! Stop!
Yeah! So he's going back to the old number at Purdue. When you had it,
let's get it, baby.
That's why it was starving for more.
Let's get it.
Going back. You know, in the fantasy space, in football, we get excited about these things. You know, all these new players rocking the single digits. It gets you hyped. It's like they're going back to when they were dominating in college. It makes them feel good. It helps them, seize all of their powers. And so I'm very excited. And to your point, Chase Edmonds rocking number 2. So you got number 2 and number 4 going to be the 2 big weapons in the short game. And so you can go off about Rondale wearing number 4.
No. I'm just going to say there are some numbers that signify swag and dopeness. Number 2 is like the all-time football. If you rock number 2 in high school and college, you were probably pretty damn good. Number 4 is also a dope number. I wore number 4 in college. I was trying to pull up a picture. I know I got my college picture in here somewhere, but I wore number 4 in college. I started out as number 8, switched to number 4, so it was only right that Rondale. So Rondale is officially single digits now. Yeah, this is confirmed.
He's switching number 4.
Bro.
Yeah, he's switching number 4. They put out the release yesterday. He's done with 85. He's done with it. He's like, I don't want 85.
It never looked right. The 85 never looked right. Nope. I wasn't feeling the 85. He's too small to have the 85 on. But the 4, I'm still digging for this damn picture so I can show it on the screen. But yeah, your boy GQ rocked number 4 in college, man. Out there at DB, muffin kick returns, getting yanked out of the game for having the visor on. I was swagged out in college, man. I had dreads. Here goes that Devonta Smith, Sean Wade picture that we were talking about. That's pretty damn funny. But Rondale Moore, I'm taking the over, 545 yards. He's number 4. He's going to start in the slot. And I do think, if anything were to happen to AJ or whatever, you can roll Rondale Moore as your number 2 wide receiver. So overall, I'm not bullish on the Arizona Cardinals as a team. I think inside the team, especially for fantasy football, for betting purposes, there are some pricing lines that you can take advantage of. But overall, Cardinals, not really feeling them. Cliff Kingsbury's got to show us all something this season to justify why the hell he's a head coach in the first damn place. But that's it. That's the show. I appreciate all the people. I got some of my boys in the chat making fun of me. This is what we like to just have fun on the show. When you wake up, we want to entertain you. We want to make sure that you get some sort of actionable advice from this show, but we appreciate y'all tapping in. Make sure you subscribe to the Wake Up with Ray G podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel on Best TV. Stay tapped in to Jordan, myself. I don't know what we're going to do tomorrow. I think we've got the Rams futures, some Rams team previews, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and maybe some Sony Michel lines, Aaron Donald. It's going to be fun, but make sure y'all are up 8 a.m. tomorrow. Y'all have a great day. We out. Peace.